guys, and welcome to a new and very special video on Sonal's life. I don't know if you can realize, but I'm actually not alone, and I'm here with a very special guest, someone who I have mentioned many times in my reviews and previews, but I'm gonna let them introduce themselves because I think that's probably the best thing we can do.
Welcome YouTube Live. This is Ninja Mack coming to you from Tokyo, Japan.
So if this interview isn't exciting enough that I have got the Ninja Mack here, he is actually, we're speaking to him from Japan after he has finished his amazing run. He had some amazing appearances in the Fantastica Mania show. So I guess I want to start, how is your time in Japan going? It's obviously my followers know, and they followed me to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom weekend, but how is your experiences there at the moment?
Amazing. I get to experience New Japan at a very different level than I have experienced New Japan. The last time I was able to experience New Japan was the Super Junior Tag League and Super Juniors. But this time, wrestling at Fantastic Mania, I was able to experience Japan with a bunch of luchadors and be able to battle some of the top CMLL luchadors in the world. And they are very mucho loco.
I think for most people, the Fantastica Mania show, it obviously comes off normally the New Beginnings, and it's so much fun to watch. I guess, what is the big difference between the Fantastica Mania shows? And like you said, last year you did the Best of Super Junior and the Super Junior Tag League.
You get to bring the Lucha Libre style over to Japan. And just for the Lucha Libre style, just based out of Mexico, and for it to get over here, the level of athleticism, the display of showmanship, the crowd work compared to a pro wrestling show to Lucha Libre. They're so very involved with the fans, very, very close when they're fighting each other in the ring. They'll get outside the ring. And just like Japan, they get the 20 count. I mean, they're running back at 19 just because they spent all the time out with the fans, getting very close and personal.
I think Lucha Libre is phenomenal. And I guess, speaking of, obviously, Lucha Libre wrestling, I want to take it back, way back. So what was your first experience or your first, moment where you watch professional wrestling? Because I feel like everyone has their own story and it's unique.
You know, my father was an amateur wrestler in high school and college growing up, so I was just kind of bred into the wrestling world. And then just being the oldest of 7 children, and seeing WWF at the time versus WCW, that was around the time of my child age. So when that was peaking, I'd be wrestling at practice and going home and trying to catch the Monday Night Wars. And that 90s time was so influential that even my parents, my uncles, my aunts, they would rent the pay-per-views. And that was really my first introduction to watching professional wrestling on TV, and I was hooked. I was hooked from day one, and then being the oldest of 7 children, I got to practice everything on my younger siblings. So it was just something always phenomenal to experience.
And you said you're watching WCW, and what was the transition to Lucha Libre wrestling? Because I feel like back in that time, there was so much, obviously, in the early days of WWF, WWE, there were so many amazing lucha stars. Was that your first sort of insight into the world of Lucha Libre?
Of course, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, that cruiserweight of the WCW vision, even going back to Owen Hart representing WWF, just the junior division and the difference in athleticism. I was hooked. I was never the biggest guy at school. I was never the biggest guy at wrestling practice. I'm still not even one of the biggest guys. I could probably say I'm one of the smallest guys in professional wrestling. So to be able to watch that style growing up, it goes back to Ultimate Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, those juniors that really carried us through the 90s into the 2000s. And Rey Mysterio is still going right now, 40 years later.
I think that's I like how you said that not always the biggest guy. As someone who is I'm 5'1", that's what I love about the luchadors, and similarly when I used to watch the cruiserweights and things, is that seeing people who maybe might get overlooked actually showcase that there is not one style of wrestling, there is not one style of physique or person that fits the wrestling mold.
Yeah, and they get the ability to show the passion, the fire, the storytelling throughout their matches. It's such a there's not just one way to write a book. There's not one way just to do a wrestling match. There's so many stories that can be told.
And obviously, you had an amazing experience. You were doing your some of the independent circuits, but I want to speak about your time because obviously we do New Japan, but we also speak a lot about pro wrestling in general. Your debut in Pro Wrestling Noah. Obviously, you were meant to go quite a few years ago, but the pandemic and everything basically put the world on hold. What was it like when you finally got to Noah and made your debut?
Oh, it was such an honor. And then not just an honor to debut for Pro Wrestling Noah, because that's something I've idolized, just even becoming a professional wrestler. But to be able to do that against two of my closest friends I consider family, Alpha Wolf and Dragon Bane. If it wasn't for those two, I probably wouldn't have even made it to Pro Wrestling Noah. Right before the world kind of opened, we were running shows in Houston, and I had the chance to really have a match with Dragon Bane and meet them for the first time back in 2020, maybe early 2021. And when we had that match, those were the clips with Wrestling with Unicorns that went viral, and Noah was able to see that. And then from that match alone, I was able to get that call from Pro Wrestling Noah, and then just to have my visa ready, passport ready, and then to be told, hey, Japan's going to close down with COVID-19 for another year, so we're going to have to just kind of be patient. One, I want to thank GCW for letting me get a whole year of just extra repetition in on the work. But to finally be able to make that long-awaited debut, it felt like an eternity for that year. But when it finally happened, it was such an amazing experience. And if you haven't done so, go check out that three-way match. That's a phenomenal three-way match.
Yeah, make sure you go watch it. And I think you said that obviously it was a huge thing for you. What was your first time, like, well, I guess if you remember, your first experience of watching Pro Wrestling Noah? Because obviously, I love how passionate you seem about the company, and I just kind of want to know where your love for that started.
Just growing up, I tried to watch as much wrestling as I could. The Monday Night Wars, when SmackDown was on Thursday, you had the pay-per-views. But down in Texas and Houston, on random nights, I can't remember the channel, it was so long ago, we would get Japanese wrestling for about an hour, and it was on some very late night times that I probably shouldn't have been awake at 1 or 2 in the morning. But I remember watching Marufuji versus Kenta, and they kicked the shit out of each other, and I was hooked. I'm sorry, am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah, you honestly, everyone always says they're like, you could monetize from YouTube, and I'll go, but one of the restrictions on that is that I am not allowed to swear, so you can say whatever you want on this channel.
Oh, phenomenal. But no, I'll keep it Ninja Queen. But no, watching Marufuji and Kenta, I was hooked because, like I said, they weren't the biggest guys in the ring, but they were giving it all. Those two guys really cemented that junior division when Noah broke away, and they were the foundation. And actually, surprisingly now, Kenta just got back to Pro Wrestling Noah, which is phenomenal. Like that's amazing. I wish that could have happened in the last 2 years when I was there.
I think it's interesting how obviously it's gone full circle. Obviously, we are in New Japan YouTube mainly, and we love Kenta, we spoke about it, but it feels like we have taken a trip down memory lane, and you could have put the current state of Noah 10, 15 years ago with Kenta at the top, and I think it's amazing.
Oh, he's a phenomenal wrestler. I've watched so many matches. It'll be a day, and it'll be a phenomenal day for me the day I can meet him, be able to introduce myself to Kenta.
Guys, we need to make this happen. We need Ninja Mack to meet Kenta. So people on the internet, people in the universe, we need to manifest this.
Bet that.
You also won gold while you were there, and obviously you won the GHC Junior and also the Openweight Hardcore Championship. What was that experience like for both the titles? Because obviously they're so different. The nature of them are so unique. What was your experiences with that? And obviously the matches where you won them.
The ability to go out and to become the 50th GHC Junior Heavyweight Champion, and Hayata at the time was on a very impressive streak. He was actually 1 or 2 matches away from breaking the title defense record. So for me to pull that upset and get that win on Hayata's carried that junior division the last 5 years, so to be able to beat him was phenomenal. To face Shuji in a hardcore match, the the hardcore belt that they revitalized, man, one, I would say it shows that I'm able to go from junior division to wrestle the hardcore style, to wrestle the heavyweights. But at the same time, man, Shuji, he whooped my ass that match, and I gave my best. Luckily, I didn't get the win on Shuji, but to be able to beat Super Crazy and Tanaka and to defend it against Alpha Wolf at Shinjuku Face, just just honoring moments, respectful moments from Noah to be able to trust me to carry championship belts for them as a foreigner. So I just take what I can and just keep grinding.
I think that's one of the first times that I saw you, because I used to dip in and out of Noah, and I was like, oh my god, who is this amazing person? What did you learn? If there was like one thing, like I guess you probably learned a million things, but what was the one biggest thing you took away from your time in Pro Wrestling Noah?
Patience. I'd have to say patience, one, because I've traveled a lot of the world with a lot of what I've done before wrestling and then before I went to Noah. And then to come to Japan and experience the culture, the lifestyle, and actually to be able to move over here for quite a bit of time. The patience it took. You wanna be handed everything. You want to be gun ho. You want to run. Right when your feet touch the ground, you want to go. I was making so many views every week with so many clips, but at the same time, it was the patience, make sure I was ready at the time for everything that was brought towards me. There was never a rush. Noah handled me very well, and patience is the best thing I learned from Pro Wrestling Noah.
And I think patience is key in pro wrestling in general, and I guess we're going to segue nicely because we're going to speak about New Japan, because obviously that's what this channel is about. I think we'll go straight into, I think, a lot of the New Japan fans' first experiences of you was the Best of Super Junior last year. What was your experience in that? Because obviously it is, for me, and everyone knows this, my favorite New Japan tournament of the year, which obviously, as you guys know, we are coming close to the tournament. How was it to be invited to be part of it?
It was amazing. At the time, I was representing Pro Wrestling Noah. So last year, when I went into Super Juniors, they had to go through Noah to get to me. So it was upon approval, and I'm very grateful that Noah gave me that chance to step out, because they allowed me to work Dragon Gate before. They allowed me to work the All Together shows when we're doing the fundraisers. But for me to be able to go out there with Hayata and represent Pro Wrestling Noah against New Japan, number one versus number two, and we're on different sides of the bracket. I think we both had very good showings, and it was a very good experience to wrestle a whole new set of people. The last 2 years wrestling through the Noah division really helped me get ready for that. But you never know what it's going to like until you step into a new locker room, a new car, new fans. So it's just more experience so I can grow and become better.
You mentioned the new fans, and obviously I want to speak about Best Junior, but do you see a difference between the Pro Wrestling Noah fans and the New Japan fans?
That's a very hard question for me to answer, because when I get out there, sometimes it looks like I'm engaging with the fans, but my focus is on my opponent in the ring. So for me to really focus on this fan and that fan in between shows is very difficult. I appreciate all the Japanese fans, because they've been very welcoming to me.
Yeah, I think Japan fans are in a world of their own. When I was there for Wrestle Kingdom, there was just a different energy about them. But I obviously want to talk about the Best of Super Junior more in detail. For your debut appearance, you did absolutely amazing with points. You were in a very stacked, I think the whole tournament was stacked, but which matches stood out to you the most? Which ones were like, oh my god, this is a dream, or ones that you were anticipating when the blocks were announced?
All my opponents it was such a stacked card. You can go the first match with Robbie Eagles. Just my opening match with New Japan. That was something phenomenal. And then Robbie Eagles is such a phenomenal wrestler in himself. And then Hiromu, to be able to wrestle Hiromu and to be in front of that large of a crowd. He's one of their top shining stars in New Japan. So to be able to wrestle him, and that was something out this world. Obviously, I'd have to give a shout out for the Dragon Gate. I mean, Dragon Dia, our match to represent two different companies at New Japan Super Juniors. That's something that I'll hold to my heart forever. But then a match that I will never get out of my head right now is my final match at Kurikan against Drilla Maloney. The guy's running hot right now. He's a beast of a man. And for that final match, instead of winning on a positive note and going up for the tournament, he caught me at the end, spiked me on my head to finish the tournament, and that'll be a lasting memory for me. Is just getting dropped on my head on the outside and not being able to get back up. So that's something I'll hold to myself, and one day maybe be able to get that revenge back.
Drilla really did make an impact because obviously he had that match with Akira that obviously he likes to say took Akira out the tournament. You said that your match with him was the most impactful. Would you say that that was the hardest match against Drilla? Because, yeah, we've spoken on this channel that Drilla obviously was a junior but has made the seamless transition to heavyweight. He's obviously in the New Japan Cup now. What is it, as because you mentioned you were a bit of a smaller guy, going up against someone like Drilla who, even as a junior, he's one of the biggest guys, but even comparing him on a heavyweight roster, he is such a domineering presence.
You got to give credit to Drilla. He puts the time into the gym. He's got that presence in the ring. The most impactful match, now that I think about it, was the Taiji Ishimori match. And kind of going back to, I know Drilla is such a monster of a man, but Taiji wrestled in pro wrestling. No, he was a junior heavyweight champion. He was the New Japan Junior champion. And for him to really kind of set a path, that's something I'll also remember. And that was a very impactful match for me, let alone that match produced 4 or 5 million views on my Instagram and Twitter. So that's a very impactful match just in numbers to me.
I mean, we love Taiji Ishimori on this. Another guy who is, I think he's around 5'5", but one of the strongest and most dynamic men in the ring. And I always say that, especially like Japanese wrestling, generally shows that size doesn't matter. And I love that.
Yeah, a lot of Japanese wrestling comes down to that fire and that heart and that passion you have that you carry in that ring. And if you can get those fans behind you, that'll carry you a long way in this business.
And we're obviously around this time, I'm not sure when this interview will be posted, but we are coming up to, in about a month or so, the Best of Super Junior. Now, obviously, I don't know whether the lineup has been announced, but I have mentioned on my Twitter, and Ninja Mack retweeted it with eyes emoji, that I would love to see you in this year's tournament. Is there somebody that you would like to face? Like a junior heavyweight, I guess, whether it's a New Japan or someone from outside, because obviously the Best of Super Junior is known to have people from different companies. Is there that dream Best of Super Junior match you have in your head?
Off the top of my head, there's 2 people. One, I really pride myself in going for championships and being a championship wrestler. So El Desperado, who has the junior championship right now, I was able to share the ring with him briefly at Fantastic Mania, and I think me and him will have a match that'll set the bar high for the juniors. But to put out a wrestler that I also shared the ring with at Fantastic Mania for CMLL, Titan. I think me and Titan, we shared that ring for a slight moment, and we captured that crowd. And I think if we were able to get a good one-on-one match and not just a tag match, we could break the internet, I believe.
Titan is amazing, and I think, yeah, you two together with such a pure lucha style would create magic, and obviously that was Best of Super Junior. But as we mentioned earlier, obviously you did the GHC Openweight. Is there any wrestler in New Japan, doesn't matter weight class, faction, anything, that you would like to wrestle?
Ooh, you give me some tough questions. You're putting me on the spot on this one. Oh, let's see. Now you get me all worked up. I'm getting fired up thinking about opponents now.
To be fair, it's the same. You have the same reaction when someone asks, who is your favorite New Japan wrestler? And you're like, there's like a million people in your head, and you're like, but wait, and it's very conflicting. So I like to do those hard questions, and I know that that one is always one of the hardest.
Yeah, because I'm so new to where I've only had experience to wrestle a handful. I could name so many people just off the top of my head that I would just want to wrestle. I would, you know what? TJ Perkins, TJP. If he wants to have a one-on-one match, that's something I'd look really forward to having.
That's interesting because TJP is obviously in the New Japan Cup, but there has been no official confirmation that he is moving up to heavyweight. So who knows that this match could maybe happen in the Best of Super Junior? Fingers crossed.
That is a possibility. What's funny to me though is do you know off the top of your head what's the weight split from juniors to heavyweights?
In the actual division or the whole company?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't know specifically, but I have always said this because I compare it to the tournaments and how I've watched it. It feels like it's like 3/4 heavyweight, 1/4 junior. Specifically, if you focus on the juniors within New Japan who are contracted, there's always, I think it's generally quite common, and I don't like saying this as like a big junior fan, that the heavyweights tend to outnumber the juniors, because you also have that thing of like, oh, the juniors will, and this channel knows I hate saying this, move up to the heavyweights. So
of course. But I was just wondering off the top of my head, do you know the actual kilos for the actual split? There's a weight requirement.
Yes, so the juniors is 200 pounds, I think 100 kilograms. And then obviously above that is heavyweight. But New Japan is great, and obviously you can be under that weight and then be a heavyweight as well. We've had people like Zack Sabre Jr., Kenta, who have all been under the weight class but have chosen to be heavyweights.
Now, if you choose to be heavyweight, can you go back to the junior division?
Yeah, I think Driller actually probably mentioned, I think with Clark said that, oh, Driller can do the heavyweights, but if he wants, he can come back. It's obviously not, I think, the easiest, and I actually don't think anyone has done that.
Okay.
But never say never. It is something that can happen.
Of course. I'm just asking the host some questions, testing the New Japan knowledge here.
Testing, you know what? I always say, like, oh, yeah, I'm the biggest New Japan fan, and I like how, because normally I do these interviews and I'm asking questions, but I love it when people quiz me, because I'm like, right, I've got to show my New Japan passion right here. I've got to show that I am someone that New Japan needs to hire.
Yes, New Japan, if you haven't done so, please go hire this show, Sonya's Live.
And I obviously talking about how I'm the biggest New Japan fan and passion. Because we're recording this in the midst of the New Japan Cup. You were obviously in the Korakuen Hall for the unexpected New Japan Cup turned New Japan talk show. And I feel like that's a historical moment as any New Japan fan. What was that like, watching it from the balconies?
It was it was good to see the difference the wrestlers can pull off when an accident like that happens and a post actually breaks and they have to redo a show. Instead of just refunding the tickets, which they did, they refunded everyone. They gave them still a show. They still went out. They still gave talk shows. They still gave interactions to the fans. And that's a credit to the New Japan Wrestling Company, just going out, and a credit to the wrestlers to be able to go out on the fly and to improv and to be able to make something happen like that, to entertain your fans rather than just sending them home and saying, oh, today's not a show. No, they still went out there and they still gave their fans their time. And that's a very good credit for New Japan wrestlers to be able to do.
Yeah, New Japan always the best. Whenever, obviously I did in Japan, but I've visited and I've done 4 Royal Quest shows now in the UK. And it feels like every wrestler puts their heart into it. But obviously talking about the talk show and they all came out in factions, I always ask this to every guest I have. If there is a New Japan faction that you would like to join, which one would it be?
I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a gambling man. I like to make a lot of bets. When I first started, I was known as the dealer Ninja Mack. So to answer that question, I'm not a tag wrestler. That's not my specialty. I'm a very solo individual. But if there was a faction that was to offer, I would have to say the one that offers the most money.
Right, I'm thinking about which faction that might be, and I kind of think you might be the best bet is with the War Dogs. I feel like Gabe and Driller and Finn, they always talk about getting paid and things like that. So could that be somewhere?
You know what? I'm not against. I think my ability to adapt to the situation would be is something I've done. Like we talked about earlier in the junior matches to hardcore matches, to go into factions and to get into teams. I'm very adaptable. So I'm very universal. To if they need me here, I could be there. If you need me here, I could be there. And I take pride in being able to do my part and be able to be used where I need to be.
Oh, well, I guess we can ever see maybe in the future if there's a faction who has got their eye on you. But I guess subscribers in the comments, let me know which faction do you think Ninja Mack would suit the best. Obviously, you guys know how much I love the faction system here, so let me know in the comments. And I guess on that,
I'll be reading comments. I'll be checking because I might influence my decision, fans. So please leave those comments. Maybe we make a poll. Let's make a poll on Twitter.
So remember, you guys, you've got many options, okay? You have Los Ingobernables de Japón, the new Hontai Chaos combination, the Empire, War Dogs. We're not going to mention House of Torture. Don't worry. I'm not going to subject that. We don't do that on this channel. We have just 4 guys. The possibilities endless, so let us know in the comments, please. And again, we'll do a poll. And again, you could be the reason why Ninja Mack chooses a faction in the future.
That is very true. Bet that. Hey, or we can start a whole new faction.
I've said this. I believe that New Japan needs a new one. So, I know another option. Ninja Mack creates a new faction and I join as a manager. Okay?
That we call that Ninjas Japan Pro Wrestling.
So so that's another option that you guys can put. And obviously, we're going on from there. I think we're going to end with the biggest question. I think the one that you can tell everyone, what do you want to see in the future for Ninja Mack?
You know, anytime I get to a company, Fantastic Mania, be able to experience the CMLL wrestlers, to be able to experience the New Japan wrestlers. What I did recently at Noah, I pride myself in being a championship wrestler. And not saying I go out and win championships every time I wrestle, but the ability to go out there and to get 20, 30, 40 minutes in front of the fans, to be able to tell a story is what I like to pride myself in. So I like to say I always shoot for championships. I shoot for the top, or I shoot for the most memorable match I can make for the fans so they can remember that for a lifetime.
It has been absolutely amazing to speak to you, Ninja Mack. You guys know that I want to speak to more people here, so let me know in the comments who you want me to speak to. Ninja Mack has been like an amazing opportunity for me, and we want to do it more. And obviously, for that, you need to get me known. You need to spread the word of Sono's life. So make sure to hit like, hit share, and hit subscribe. You can follow me on social media at wrestling_chat. Ninja Mack, where can they find you on any social media platforms?
Everything. Ninja Mack on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Please go like, subscribe, comment, and you can bet that.
And we will see you guys very soon. Bye.
Johnny.